He was storytelling and acting, and a lot of times he would get his reluctant cousins involved, but like I said, it was a nightly. The Hudak Living Room Theater was a nightly. We never knew what was coming up with acting out videos or coming up with some new story, and so like I said, he was born to do this. And he grew up in the golden age. It was probably called the golden age of Disney musical movies. He loved Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Lion King, Hunchback of Notre Dame. But by far his favorite was Beauty and the Beast. And what could be a more appropriate movie for him and a heroine for him than someone who loved books and loved adventures and of far off lands, and it was really a match made in heaven. And anybody who really didn't know Ryan personally, he was an avid reader on top of being a writer. So when they made Beauty and the Beast into a Broadway musical, we took Ryan for his first theatrical experience. And when the curtain went up, and it was all over. He had found home. He just, the singing, the acting, the production work. He's like, wow, this is what I want to do. And so we were lucky enough to have on Long Island a very good local theater group called Gateway Playhouse, and they put on near Broadway quality plays and musicals, but they also had a very good young theater actors school. And so I think he was about 8 years old that he asked to be enrolled in it, and so he would take classes from I think 8 and then right on till he graduated high school. And he actually worked there in the ticket office, and he actually got to be in some of the main stage plays that they put on there. And I think, I think one of them was actually Beauty and the Beast, if I remember correctly. But all that experience with the classes when he went to middle school, the middle school he went to had a very good theater program, and they gave him the confidence to go in and be part of their musical productions. And Ryan was always lucky. He always got to be in shows that he really liked. Like he got to be in the offbeat Little Shop of Horrors, if you've ever seen that one, and also the Fairy Tales Turned Upside Down, Into the Woods. So he wasn't like he got into ones where he's like, I kind of like that one. No, he got into ones we had seen on Broadway, and he's like, oh, I really wish you could do that. So anyway, that was. But it wasn't really till he went to high school that he started to really take off. And you hear these stories about teachers, and it was 2 teachers who really made a big difference in Ryan's life. And Chrissy Reinhardt, wherever you are, God bless you. When he was a freshman, when he was a freshman, his high school did not only musical theater productions, but they also did plays. So this was the first time he was introduced to that world. And she put him in this small part in this All My Sons as a freshman. And she said to me afterwards, maybe a year later, she goes, I was waiting because I saw the talent in him, and I couldn't wait to put him in a play the following year where he could really get going. And that play was a play called Dracula, where he played the deranged character Renfield, who was Dracula's servant. And I can still see Ryan on stage, because at one point they have to put Renfield in a prison to keep him away from Dracula. And he did this whole monologue, and he's like, at one point, basically howling for his master. And when I looked at Pat and I said, I think we got something here. And so it was Ryan's moment. So in his senior year, Ryan was voted Best Actor for a play and musical. And they did the play Rumors, which is a musical comedy, and anybody who knows Ryan, he had a great sense of humor, so for him to do a musical comedy was just perfect. But this other teacher who was involved with the musical productions, Reagan Sweden, and wherever you are, Reagan Sweden, we love you. She told me about a year after he graduated, she said, I wanted to do this one show for the last 3 years, but I waited for the perfect cast, and I waited for your son. And she said, because he was the perfect lead in this crazy musical called You're in Town. If you've ever seen it, and actually it's an amazing show and very perfect for today's world of droughts, climate change, and greed, because it has all of that. So anyway, he was the narrator and the law enforcement of Urinetown, Officer Lockstock, and we have Jackie Mandart here from that crazy production, and they did a fantastic job. It was like, when we saw it on Broadway, and I tell you, they almost did exactly what Broadway did. So it was definitely a high point of his high school career. After high school, he went on to Long Island University and joined their theater program. But it wasn't too long, or it wasn't maybe a year or so before that Ryan came out to us and told us he was gay. And as parents, you know these things way before your children have the courage to say it to you. And as far as Pat and I was concerned, it didn't make a difference, except we knew that it's going to be a more challenging life for him. Because unfortunately, in this world, if you're unique or different, things can be certainly more difficult than you're a normal person. Again, when he went to Long Island University, he kind of found like-minded people and accepting people and people who he could relate to, and that was really for the first time he could find, a really friend group that hey, I'm okay. Everything's okay being here. And it was also in the undergrad time where he started to really write. And he would write plays and have readings during his 4 years at Long Island University. But one point that sticks out of my mind, a summer before his senior year, he got an email from Maria Porter, who was the theater director, telling them that they were going to do the big play that year was going to be this classic play called Antigone. And but she said, we're going to do it our way. We're going to reimagine it, we're going to rewrite it, we're going to bring it up to date, so we're going to do it our way. So she tasked Ryan and several of the other people in the class to, rewrite this whole play. And Ryan was not just the writer, he was also cast as King Creon, which was this nasty dictator-like person. And as I've been video out in front, you might have seen Ryan storming around the stage in a long leather jacket. And anybody who knew Ryan he didn't have a mean bone in his body. So, but I think he relished playing against his character with this mean, and actually someone sent us a video in remembrance of him from his Maria Porter, who I just mentioned, and she talks about him in that role. But the play was very well received in the fall. As a matter of fact, so well received, it was invited to play festivals in Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, and more about that coincidence in a minute. And then internationally up in Montreal, they got to perform it. But the crowning achievement of this collaboration was it received the Kennedy Center honors for best reimagining of a classic play, something that everything can all the cast. And we have, where are you, Nadine? Oh, there you are. Nadine and Mike Lugliato were part of that group here tonight, and so like I said, after college. Ryan continued writing more and acting less, because I think he didn't like the audition process, and so he started getting more involved with that. And he would actually go to New York City and rent studio space, and he'd talk and actually rehearse actors in New York who were aspiring actors. They're always looking to practice, and he would put on his plays. And one of the plays he did was this play called The West. That was one of my favorites, and only Ryan could come up with a play where it's the ghost of Virginia Woolf, the author, is one of the main characters. And about that same time, he had this other one called Oak, and both of those went on to be performed by Long Island University a few years later in their play festival. So, his work continued to live on. He also got involved with the theater community of New York City. He worked for the prestigious MCC Theater Group, and also the Keene Theater Company, and being their manager of house. So again, he was, not just writing, he was involved in all facets of the theater world. So about, I think it was 3 years after he graduated from Long Island University, he comes to us and says, you know what, Mom and Dad, I'd like to get my master's degree in writing. And, you know, being the practical parents, we're like, you know, we still have this very big bill from but being Ryan, he goes, don't worry, Mom and Dad, I got this. They actually give scholarships for these master programs. I said, really, Ryan? What schools give what schools give scholarships? And he said, oh, you know, Yale, Stanford, USC, Carnegie Mellon. And we're like, and then all of a sudden when we heard that, we became the supportive parents again. Ryan, you go ahead. You go ahead, you know, because we're like, the odds are pretty long, we thought, that he was going to get into one of those schools, but we learned many times not to underestimate our son. And I said to him, you know, what do you have to do to get into these schools? He said, well, I have to send in my resume and some of my old work, and then I have to write a 100-page play, which was like, you know, child's play for Ryan, and I think in 2 weeks he had this play called The Fire Watcher. And he sent it off to those schools I mentioned before, and about 2 months later, he gets an email from Carnegie Mellon University, and we're looking for an interview in New York City. And, you know, we thought it was part of the application process, so, and you know, people who know Carnegie Mellon usually know it as a engineering and technical college, but it's one of the leading performing arts schools in the country. And matter of fact, their theater building has a walk of fame that's literally Broadway stars and Hollywood stars and producers and directors and writers, so it is a very impressive program. So it turned out it wasn't really an interview, it was to tell him that he had won one of 5 scholarships that year to Carnegie Mellon. And after he came back and told us this, he goes, you know, Dad, it's not a full ride. There's still financial. Do you think I should really do this? And I looked at him, I said, Ryan, this is a world-class university with alumni and ties that you don't know what could happen in the future with that kind of, you know, background. I said, this is a chance of a lifetime, and you're definitely going to Pittsburgh. So off to Pittsburgh he went. It was a 2-year program, and in the second year, you know, he had to do a thesis for his master's, and that was just a small thing where you had to just create a play, produce it, cast it, and then have it performed. But if that wasn't enough for your second year, in the summer, the professor said to him, you know, Ryan, you have to create a class, and then we have to approve the class, and then you have to offer the class to be, you know, for students to actually take in the fall semester, and you have to teach it. Now, Ryan never taught in his life. And so he came up with this class, the history of gay theater, and he must have brought his acting ability to that class because I think there was 20 students in that class, and they would come up to him at the end of the semester and told him like how much they enjoyed the class and how much they learned, and I'm like, that never happens. Who does that, you know? So anyway,